Have you ever looked back at your life and asked yourself, am I truly living my life, or merely living out someone else's expectations? The world today may lead you to believe that success means pleasing the majority, sacrificing your truth to keep the peace, or chasing standards just to feel accepted. But the more you live like that, the further you drift away from your true self. Do not search for light outside yourself, because every answer you seek already resides in your soul, and that inner light only begins to shine when you dare to do what few have the courage to do. Choose yourself. Choosing yourself does not mean turning your back on the world. It means returning to what is authentic within, that quiet voice whispering to you each night. Once the noise has settled, it is the call to live, not just to survive, but to awaken. This writing isn't here to teach you anything new. It is simply a mirror, helping you see yourself more clearly. And if there's one truth to carry with you after reading all of this, let it be this: the deepest transformation doesn't come from adding more, but from returning home to yourself. 1. Society's reversal of priorities, when living for others becomes a glorified obligation. From an early age, we are taught that living for others is the highest expression of love and morality. Sacrifice for your family, put the group before yourself, and only those who live for others are truly good. These phrases have become moral compasses for generations, but few stop to ask, what happens when we live for others so much that we lose ourselves in the process? Modern society not only praises sacrifice, it glorifies it. People applaud those who give up their personal dreams in the name of duty, yet rarely ask whether such trade-offs bring true happiness. Living for others, when taken too far, stops being an act of compassion and turns into a system of self-repression. It forces us to package away our needs, suppress our emotions, and perform roles the world has scripted for us. You cannot awaken if you keep playing the roles the world has given you. The longer you live within others' expectations, the more disconnected you become from your inner voice. You stop asking, what do I want? And instead obsess over, what do they want from me? The danger is this: you may be socially validated, admired even, but deep down, you feel empty. External approval can never fill the void of a self that has never truly lived. That's why we see successful people feeling lost, loved people feeling isolated, and caregivers who don't know how to care for themselves. It's time to make a clear distinction. Loving others doesn't mean unconditional self-sacrifice. Living for someone else should never require abandoning yourself, because if you don't exist fully, you can't offer real love either. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It is the first step toward living a truly meaningful life, not only for yourself, but for everyone around you. 2. The rejected shadow and the voice within. The shadow, as the part of the psyche we deny, suppress, or refuse to face, because it doesn't align with the ideal image we want to maintain. This might include anger, ambition, jealousy, or even long-abandoned dreams we were once too afraid to pursue. When these parts are repressed over time, they don't disappear, they accumulate in the unconscious and quietly shape our emotions, decisions, and relationships. When we live according to others' expectations, we unknowingly push the shadow further away from conscious awareness. We deny our real feelings, pretend to be fine, and continue chasing external goals society deems good. But the further we stray from ourselves, the louder the inner voice grows. Through restlessness, disconnection, emptiness, or existential crisis, that is the unconscious warning to us. You've forgotten who you are. Jung believed that integrating the shadow, courageously facing the parts we've rejected, is the first step toward becoming whole. When we accept our truth, including the darkness, we begin to live honestly. We no longer need to perform perfection. We can listen to ourselves with empathy, and from there, begin to heal old wounds. The voice within is always there, soft but persistent. It doesn't scream, it whispers when you feel misaligned, but most of us are too consumed by external noise to hear it. We mistake stability for happiness, obedience for love, and resignation for peace. So when you finally ask, is this truly the life I want? That is the moment the shadow knocks on your door, not to destroy you, but to remind you who you once were, what you've abandoned, and who you could still become, if only you dared to face all the parts of yourself you've disowned. Inner freedom begins with courage, not the courage to fight the world, but to sit down and look yourself in the eye. Free. Choosing yourself is not selfish, it's the foundation for all genuine connection. In a society that exalts sacrifice and selflessness, Prioritizing yourself is often labeled as selfish, but that is a dangerous misconception, because sacrifice that doesn't stem from love for oneself easily turns into a burden, unspoken resentment, or a disguised need for validation. You cannot touch the light until you've walked through the darkness. And sometimes, the greatest shadow is the denial of your personal needs, all in the name of collective morality. When you don't choose yourself, you're not truly present in your relationships. You show up as a role, a persona built on expectations, not as your authentic self. You say yes while your heart screams no. You smile while feeling empty inside. That's not connection, it's performance. And the longer it goes on, the more exhausted, disconnected, and resentful you become. Not because others don't get you or appreciate you, but because you never chose yourself from the start. Choosing yourself is a declaration. I exist, not to please, not to maintain peace, not to uphold a role, but to live a life that is real, deep, and internally free. When you dare to set boundaries, speak your truth, and say no to what's not right, you create a field of clarity. In that space, others can connect with you honestly, without illusions or misplaced expectations, and that is where true relationships begin. True love doesn't grow from unconditional sacrifice. It grows from freedom, when two whole individuals choose to walk together, not to complete each other, but to amplify each other. And that only happens when each person has chosen themselves, understood themselves, and no longer fears disappointing others. Choosing yourself does not mean abandoning others. It means creating the conditions for every connection in your life to become more honest and real. 4. Reconnecting with intuition, the voice of the unconscious as inner compass. In a world flooded with information, noise, and external expectations, intuition has become a forgotten gift. We're taught to analyze, compare, and strategize, but rarely to trust the ancient wisdom within, the wisdom of the soul. Carl Jung called it the voice of the unconscious, the wellspring of deep understanding beyond the reach of rational thought. Intuition doesn't speak in noise. It whispers when we are still enough and brave enough to listen. It's that strange flutter in your chest when you walk into a space that feels unsafe. That quiet voice in your heart saying, "This isn't my path." That inexplicable excitement in the face of an opportunity, even when logic says, "Don't do it." All of that is guidance from within, your connection to your truest self. So why do we ignore intuition? Because it's not logical. It can't be proven. It doesn't come with spreadsheets or crowd approval. It demands that you trust yourself, and that takes courage. Courage to walk alone, courage to face doubt, courage to say no to what looks right on paper but feels wrong in your gut. When you return to intuition, you walk away from the performance. You stop living according to external standards and begin listening to the whispers within. Jung believed that the refusal to listen to the unconscious is what leads to existential crisis. And only when you return to yourself does the fog begin to lift and the path emerge, one step at a time. Remember, intuition doesn't shout, it only suggests. But once you start trusting it, practicing the art of listening, your decisions, however bold, bring a quiet peace, because they come from the most truthful place in you. As Jung once said, a person who is not connected to their unconscious can never be truly connected to themselves. 5. Resetting boundaries. Not to push others away, but to live truthfully. We often hesitate to set boundaries out of fear of hurting others, of being labeled selfish, cold, or unkind. But as Carl Jung once said, you cannot make peace with the world while betraying yourself. Resetting your boundaries isn't about pushing people away. It's about protecting your own wholeness. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges built from the truth. When you have the courage to say no to what's not right for you, you create space for genuine interaction, free from pretense, pressure, or hidden resentment. You don't have to say yes to every invitation. You don't have to show up just to please everyone. An emotionally mature person understands that saying no is not betrayal. It's a way of preserving your energy and emotional balance. Those who understand you will respect your boundaries. Those who don't will eventually hurt you if you keep abandoning yourself to please them. Jung believed that clear boundaries are a sign of a healthy ego. Not rigid, but grounded in discernment. A boundary defines what is right for me, what drains me, and what I am worthy of receiving. You have the right to say no to excessive demands. You have the right to walk away from relationships that constantly make you prove your worth. You have the right to choose peace over fitting into someone else's expectations. When you set boundaries from a place of self-love, you don't create distance, you teach others how to love you more honestly. And at the same time, you teach yourself that being honest with your own needs is the foundation for all lasting connections. 6. From wounding to awakening. You don't have to carry everything to be worthy. Many people grow up with the unconscious belief that only when they're useful, responsible, and endlessly striving do they deserve to be loved. That belief turns us into the strong one on the outside, but a burned-out child on the inside. And so, we go on living just to carry the weight, not to truly live for ourselves. Carl Jung called this the complex of worth, a psychological pattern where people constantly try to prove their value through endurance. But the truth is, you don't have to exhaust yourself to be worthy. You don't have to keep pushing to be seen. Your presence, even in stillness, is enough. Even when you please no one, wounds from the past may have shaped a survival mode of enduring to exist. But once you become aware of it, you begin your awakening, letting go of the need to be validated through sacrifice, returning to your inherent worth, the kind that needs no permission, no performance. Awakening doesn't always look bold or dramatic. Sometimes, it begins in the quiet moment when you whisper to yourself, "I'm tired," and you allow yourself to rest. That's when you no longer need anyone's approval to feel at ease. When you stop asking the world for permission to care for your soul, you can learn to exist without carrying everything. You can show up without battling every moment, and you are still worthy of love, even when you do nothing at all. Jung was right when he said, "The tree that reaches for the light must let its roots sink just as deeply into the darkness." To live fully, you must have the courage to look at your wounds, not to be defined by them, but to be reborn through them. 7. The harmony between inner life and the outer world, what Jung called synchronicity. Carl Jung once said, "Synchronicity is when the outer world mirrors the inner movement of the soul." It's not a mere coincidence. It is an invisible language, where the universe responds to your internal vibration with precise, symbolic signals. When you begin to live in truth, no longer chasing others' expectations but aligning with your inner values, strange, beautiful things start to happen. Doors you thought were closed suddenly open. People you longed to see reappear in the most unexpected ways. Opportunities arrive at the exact moment you've learned a soul-deep lesson. This is synchronicity, the universe gently whispering, "You are on the right path." But this state doesn't come easily. You must first shed many layers of pretense. When you live disconnected from yourself, when you live to please, you emit an inauthentic frequency. The world reflects that back as confusion, chaos, and misalignment. But when you descend into your inner depths, acknowledge your fears, listen to your soul, and act from that space, you begin to emit a whole, integrated vibration, and the outer world starts to resonate. Jung believed the inner and outer are not separate, they are two sides of the same spiritual stream. You don't need to force things or control outcomes. When you are truly at peace within, the world outside begins to flow with ease. Start paying attention to what seems coincidental, a book that lands in your hands just when you're feeling lost, a conversation that answers a question you haven't voiced, a spontaneous encounter that shifts your perspective. These are not random, they are reflections, mirroring your inner state back to you with gentle precision. That's when you realize, you don't need to strain to find the path, you only need to live truthfully, and the path will reveal itself. 8. The world will test you, but that's a sign you're on the right path. There is a spiritual paradox that few speak of. When you begin to live authentically, when you choose your true self over your social self, the world doesn't applaud, it tests you. The truth is, the more aligned you become, the more trials by fire will appear. You may encounter skeptical glances, passive-aggressive remarks, or even distance from people you once held dear. But this is not punishment. It is a ritual. It is the initiation of transformation. Carl Jung once emphasized, no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your inner light will cast shadows, not just in yourself, but in others. That discomfort will stir reactions. They may question you, distance themselves, judge you, but make no mistake, this is not about you doing something wrong. It's a mirror of your shift, and the discomfort that truth stirs in the still hiding. The world tests you by creating situations that demand presence and conviction. It asks, do you really believe in what you've chosen? Do you have the strength to stay aligned when the new path feels uncertain? Know this, Anyone who has chosen to live truthfully has faced a season of misunderstanding. It's the cost of inner freedom, but if you can endure it, you won't just live in alignment, you'll inspire others to do the same. So when the world begins to push back, don't shrink, smile and say, I'm being refined, not rejected. I'm being offered the chance to prove that I'm strong enough to stand as myself. And that, more than any praise, is the clearest sign you are exactly where you need to be. 9. Choosing yourself each day, even in the smallest things. There's a common misconception about choosing yourself, that it's some grand, life-altering decision, like quitting a job, ending a relationship, or completely changing your life's direction. But in reality, choosing yourself doesn't begin at the crossroads. It begins in the smallest, often overlooked moments that repeat throughout daily life. Carl Jung once emphasized, people are not shaped by rare moments, but by what they do repeatedly every day. That's why authenticity doesn't wait for a dramatic event. It lives in the quiet, mundane choices we often brush aside. Choosing yourself means saying no to an invitation your intuition gently warns you against. It's pausing for 5 minutes in the midst of chaos to breathe and check in with your body. It's eating a meal that nourishes your actual needs, not just your habits. It's being honest about discomfort, instead of hiding it behind a polite smile. These acts seem small, but it is precisely in the small that our inner strength reveals itself. Anyone can live authentically in rare, dramatic moments, but not everyone has the courage to live truthfully each day, when no one is watching, when there is no applause, and when nothing grand seems to be happening. Choosing yourself is a silent act, but its impact ripples far. Each time you prioritize yourself with awareness, you send a message to your subconscious. I matter, I am worthy. And that repeated message begins to reshape how you see the world and how the world responds to you. Remember, you don't need to overturn your whole life to live aligned. You just need to begin with a single small act and repeat it with love and consistency. Each time you choose yourself, even in the tiniest way, is a step on your path to awakening. 10. Profound transformation doesn't happen in big breakthroughs, but in the steady commitment to living true. We're often taught that life transforms through major milestones, graduation, marriage, career change, or life-shaking events. But Carl Jung saw the opposite. True transformation doesn't happen in storms. It unfolds in the quiet current of inner alignment, cultivated daily, like a stream that smooths stone over time. It is your steadfast commitment to living in truth, in your actions, your choices, your thoughts, that creates enduring transformation. This is not a surface change, but a deep internal shift, a movement from reactive living to conscious presence. You may not even notice it at first. There won't be fireworks or applause. When you choose honesty over people-pleasing, when you forgive instead of retaliate, when you choose silence instead of argument. But in those very moments, you are shifting from a self shaped by fear to a self rooted in clarity and grounded knowing. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming your whole, authentic self. There is no graduation ceremony. It happens quietly, in the repetition of truthful, grounded choices. It means, every time you stay true to your inner knowing, despite outside judgment, every time you choose peace over being right, every time you listen rather than react, you are weaving a new version of yourself. Deep transformation doesn't need drama. It needs courage, the courage to live just a little more honestly today than yesterday, to move a little closer to your true self. And one day, you'll realize, you don't need to change the whole world. You only need to change how you walk through it, and the world will shift in response. 11. The world changes through you. You are the nucleus of a new awakening. We often believe that to change the world, we must have power, influence, or fame. But Carl Jung once said, he who heals the world must first dare to heal himself, because the external world is not the cause. It is merely a mirror reflecting your inner world. Choosing yourself, living truthfully, facing your shadow, setting boundaries, listening to your intuition, and acting from a place of awareness. These are not merely personal steps. They are deeply collective acts. Each person who chooses to live authentically becomes a nucleus of light, quietly vibrating through the invisible energy field in which all of society exists. You might think, but I'm just an ordinary person. What power do I have? But look again, each time you speak your truth, you inspire someone else to do the same. Each time you walk away from a toxic relationship, you clear a path for someone to recognize their own worth. And each time you choose peace over reaction, You soften a piece of collective violence in the world. Awakening doesn't arrive through loud revolutions. It arrives through ordinary people, quietly choosing to live differently. You don't need to preach. You don't need to convince anyone. You only need to live true and allow the stillness of your presence to become an unspoken invitation. In quantum physics, there's a concept called resonance field, where one strong frequency naturally pulls surrounding frequencies into alignment. Human consciousness works the same way. When you step into integrity and authenticity, you don't need arguments to influence others. You change them through energy. The world does not need more perfect people. It needs more real ones. People who are willing to return to their essence, who dare to choose themselves amidst a sea of expectations, who live with the full presence of a heart awakened. You are a vital link in humanity's collective shift. Each time you choose to live consciously, you're not just saving yourself. You are quietly transforming the spiritual ecosystem we all inhabit. Begin with yourself, and you will see that the world is already changing. Living true to yourself is not a grand leap. It's a quiet series of small choices, repeated daily. Living true to yourself is not a dramatic leap. It's a quiet series of small choices, repeated every day, in silence. It's when you say no, even when everyone expects you to say yes. It's when you pause to listen to your inner voice, even when it contradicts what society expects of you. It's when you choose peace over victory, truth over approval. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But you, the one reading these words, have already begun to light a flame, and that flame does not only illuminate your own path, it begins to ripple outward, touching the world around you. You do not need to become someone else to be loved. You do not need to strain to prove your worth. The world does not need more copies. It needs the genuine presence of people who dare to choose themselves, dare to live authentically, and dare to open the way for those still wandering in the dark. You are the beginning. You are the root of every transformation. And from this courageous choice, a new world begins.